The moment my mother's hand connected with my cheek, in front of 200 guests at my own resort, I knew the performance was over. The sharp crack echoed through the marble lobby of Azure Bay, and for 3 seconds, the entire world went silent. My face stung, but not as much as the realization that this woman who had given birth to me 26 years ago had just committed assault on camera in my establishment. She was screaming something about respect and knowing my place, her face red and contorted completely, unaware that the security cameras were recording every frame in crystal clear 4K. Behind her, my sister Madison was filming the whole thing on her phone for her Instagram stories, probably captioning it something like, "Entitled staff getting what they deserve." And there, smirking in his overpriced suit that was 2 seasons out of date, was Bryce Madison's fiancé, the man who had called me worthless trash just 3 hours earlier. I want to tell you something before we go any further. If you have ever been the black sheep of your family, the one who was never quite good enough, the one whose achievements were dismissed while your siblings' mediocrity was celebrated, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and drop a comment telling me about your own experience with toxic family members. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this ends. But let me take you back to where it all really started. Let me tell you how I got here, standing in the lobby of a resort I owned wearing a staff uniform, watching my own family destroy themselves without even knowing it. It was Thanksgiving 3 weeks before the incident at Azure Bay. I had driven 4 hours to my parents' house in suburban Connecticut, a modest colonial that my father had been paying off for 20 years. The moment I walked through the door, I could feel it. That familiar weight of disappointment that seemed to seep from the walls whenever I came home. My mother barely looked up from the turkey she was basting. No hug, no greeting, just a pointed glance at the clock, even though I was actually 15 minutes early. Madison, on the other hand, got a full parade. She had arrived 30 minutes after me, arms loaded with shopping bags from stores I knew she could not afford. My mother rushed to help her, cooing over every purchase, asking about her Instagram engagement rates, praising her for being such a savvy businesswoman. The irony was suffocating. Madison had not held a real job in 4 years. She lived off my parents' retirement savings and credit cards, creating an illusion of success through carefully filtered photos and borrowed designer items. But in my parents' eyes, she was the golden child. She was visible. She was performing the kind of success they understood. I had made the mistake of trying to help once. 2 years ago, I had offered Madison a real job at my company. I did not tell her I owned it. I just said I could get her in as a social media coordinator. The pay was good, $60,000 a year with benefits. She had laughed in my face. Actually laughed. She told me she made that much in a month through brand deals, which was a complete fabrication. I had checked. She was making maybe $800 a month, and most of that went straight to financing her lifestyle. Dinner was the same performance it always was. My father asked Madison about her upcoming wedding, congratulated Bryce on his business ventures, which, as far as I could tell, consisted of a series of failed startups and mounting debt. When he turned to me, his question was simple and cutting. So Harper's still at that restaurant I had worked, at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Manhattan, for 6 months 3 years ago, as part of my hospitality management research. Somehow in my family's narrative that had become my entire career, they had no idea that I had spent the last 4 years building Azure Bay from the ground up, that I had investors from 3 countries, that Forbes had featured me in their 30 under 30 list under a pseudonym I used for business. I just smiled and said I was doing fine. My mother cut in before I could say more. Well, we cannot all be successful like Madison. Some people are just meant to support others. It was not said with malice exactly. It was worse. It was said with the casual certainty of someone stating a simple fact. Then Madison dropped her big news. She and Bryce were planning their engagement photo shoot at Azure Bay, the luxury resort that had been all over social media lately. She pulled out her phone and showed everyone the pictures. The infinity pools, the private beaches, the overwater bungalows. My resort. my design. My dream realized in glass and stone and carefully curated experiences, and she had no idea. My mother clasped her hands together. "Oh, honey, that is so exclusive. How did you manage to get a reservation?" Madison waved her hand dismissively. "Bryce has connections. Plus, I have over 50,000 followers. They are probably giving us a discount for the exposure." I nearly choked on my wine. There was no discount. There would never be a discount. Azure Bay had a 2-year waiting list and a strict no-influencer policy that I had personally implemented after dealing with too many entitled people who thought exposure paid bills. The conversation continued, and I learned they were planning a whole family trip. My parents were paying for their room, of course. It was going to be their Christmas present to the happy couple. $12,000 for a 3-night stay in a standard suite. I knew the exact price because I had set it. That was when my mother delivered the final blow. She looked right at me and with that same matter-of-fact tone said, "Harper, this trip is for family who have actually accomplished something. You would just feel out of place there, honey. Plus, you probably cannot afford to contribute to the costs, and we do not want you to feel bad." The table went quiet. My father nodded in agreement. Madison did not even try to hide her smirk. And Bryce, this man who had been dating my sister for 8 months, felt comfortable enough to add his opinion. "Yeah, no offense, Harper, but Azure Bay is kind of for people who are, on a certain level." I stood up. I did not throw my napkin down dramatically. I did not yell. I simply removed the apron my mother had made me wear to help serve dinner, folded it neatly, placed it on my chair, and walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother telling Madison not to worry, that I was always too sensitive, that I would get over it. I did not cry on the 4-hour drive home. I did something better. I called my assistant Eleanor, and I told her to make sure that when my family checked into Azure Bay in 3 weeks, they got exactly what they paid for. Nothing more, nothing less, and definitely no special treatment. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of final preparations. Azure Bay was hosting its annual Winter Gala, a black tie event for our premium partners and potential investors. We had tech CEOs flying in from Silicon Valley, old money from the Hamptons, international investors from Dubai and Singapore. It was the biggest night of the year, and my family had chosen the same weekend for their visit. The irony was almost too perfect. I had Eleanor set them up in a standard room, but I specified which one. Room 117. On paper, it was identical to all our other standard suites. In reality, it was the room closest to the service area, where deliveries came in at 6 a.m., where the waste management team did their rounds. It was technically a guest room, but we usually kept it for emergency overflow. It met every standard we advertised. It just was not pleasant. When they arrived, I was in my office watching the security feed. Madison was dressed head to toe in what I recognized as rental designer wear. Bryce was wearing a Rolex that I was 90% sure was fake. My parents looked uncomfortable in their dressy casual clothes, clearly feeling out of place among the clientele in the lobby. The check-in did not go well. My father's credit card was declined. Apparently, he had maxed it out buying first-class plane tickets to make an impression. Bryce claimed he had forgotten his wallet in the car, which I knew was a lie because our parking cameras had caught him checking it nervously 3 times. Madison started getting loud, demanding to speak to a manager, threatening to post about this disaster on her Instagram. Our front desk agent, Marcus, handled it beautifully. He apologized profusely, offered them water, and quietly called their bluff by suggesting they could settle the payment later after confirming their reservation details. My father eventually pulled out a different card, one I suspected was my mother's emergency credit card, and they were checked in. I watched them disappear into the elevator, and I made a decision. I was going to see this through. I was going to watch them experience my world without knowing it was mine. I wanted to see exactly how far they would go. The next morning, I put on one of our staff uniforms. At Azure Bay, even our housekeeping staff wore tailored outfits that cost more than most people's work wardrobes, but it was still clearly a uniform. I pulled my hair back, put on minimal makeup, and clipped on a name tag that said Harper Guest Experience Associate. I found them at breakfast, sitting in the main restaurant, complaining loudly about the room. Madison was filming everything, narrating for her followers about the subpar accommodations and the unacceptable noise level. When she saw me, her eyes went wide. Then she started laughing. "Oh my God," she called out loud enough that other guests turned to look. "Harper, is that you? What are you doing here?" I smiled professionally. "I work here. Can I help you with something?" The look on her face was pure vindication. She had been right about me all along in her mind. I was exactly the failure she had always believed me to be. "Mom, Dad," she called over to our parents who were at the buffet. "Look who's working here." My mother turned, saw me, and her expression shifted through several emotions before settling on embarrassment. Not for how she had treated me, but embarrassment that her daughter was serving people. She walked over quickly, her voice low and urgent. "Harper, what are you doing? Why did not you tell us you worked here? This is so awkward." I maintained my professional demeanor. "I am just doing my job. Is there anything I can assist you with this morning?" Bryce saw an opportunity. "Yeah, actually." He snapped his fingers at me like I was a dog. "Our room is unacceptable. We need an upgrade. And you can start by bringing our bags down to the pool. We are going to the VIP area." The VIP area? Of course he would assume he had access to that. The VIP section was reserved for ownership and special guests only. It had private cabanas, a separate infinity pool, and access to our exclusive beach club. It cost $5,000 a day on top of room rates. "I am sorry," I said calmly, "but the VIP area requires a separate reservation and payment. I would be happy to check availability for you." Madison's face turned red. "Do you know who I am? I have 50,000 followers. This resort should be begging for my content." I kept my expression neutral. "Our social media policy requires prior approval from management for any commercial photography or filming on property. I can have someone from our marketing team reach out to you." Bryce stood up, and I could see he was the kind of man who used his height to intimidate. "Listen, sweetheart. Clearly you do not understand how things work at places like this. We are friends with the owner. One call, and you will be out of a job." "The owner," I repeated. "That is interesting. May I ask how you know them?" He faltered for just a second. "We have mutual friends, business connections. It is none of your concern." "Well," I said, maintaining my pleasant tone, "if you would like to use the VIP facilities, I would be happy to process that upgrade for you. It would be $5,000 per day, plus tax and service fees." My mother grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Harper, stop being difficult. Just let them use the pool. You are embarrassing yourself." I gently removed her hand. "Ma'am, I need to ask you not to touch the staff. It is against resort policy." Her hand flew before I could react. The slap was not hard, but it was public. Several guests gasped. A family with small children quickly gathered their things and left. My mother was shaking with anger. "How dare you speak to me like that? I am your mother. I am a guest here. You are nothing but a servant." I felt something inside me go very still and very cold. I looked at her, this woman who had raised me, who had fed me and clothed me and sent me to decent schools, who had also spent 26 years making me feel like I was never quite enough. And I smiled. "You just assaulted a staff member," I said quietly. "On camera." I gestured slightly to the security camera above us, in front of witnesses. "I will be reporting this to management immediately." My father jumped in. "Now, Harper, do not be ridiculous. She is your mother. You cannot seriously be threatening to press charges." I did not answer. I simply turned and walked away, pulling out my phone to text Eleanor. "It is time." That afternoon, while my family was attempting to sneak into the VIP pool area, which resulted in security escorting them back and Madison creating a scene that got them a formal warning I was getting ready for the gala. The Winter Gala was the event of the season. Everyone who was anyone in the luxury hospitality world was there. I wore a custom Valentino gown in deep emerald green, my hair professionally styled makeup by an artist who normally worked with celebrities. I also wore a delicate masquerade mask, a tradition for the event that allowed guests to mingle without the usual pretense. When I entered the ballroom, I saw my family immediately. They had somehow talked their way in, probably by following another group through the doors. Madison was filming everything Bryce was aggressively networking, and my parents were standing awkwardly by the bar, clearly overwhelmed. I watched Bryce work the room, and what I saw confirmed everything I had suspected about him. He was targeting women, specifically older women, with visible wealth. When he approached Elena, who was dressed in a stunning red dress and wearing jewelry, I had loaned her from my personal collection. I saw his entire strategy. He was a predator. He assessed, he flattered. He positioned himself as successful and available. I moved closer, wanting to hear this. He was telling Elena that he was in tech investments, that he was looking for opportunities in the hospitality sector. He mentioned that his fiancé's family was old money well connected. He implied that he was only marrying Madison for love, but that her family's wealth was certainly a bonus. He said this, while Madison was 30 feet away, filming herself in front of the ice sculpture. Then he saw me. Or rather, he saw a woman in an expensive dress wearing a mask, and his predatory instincts kicked in. He excused himself from Elena and approached me with the kind of confidence that only came from practice. "I have not seen you before," he said, offering his hand. "Bryce Morrison. I am here with the Lane family. We are close friends with the owner." I let him kiss my hand, fighting the urge to pull away. "How fascinating," I said, pitching my voice slightly lower than normal. "I have heard so much about this resort's mysterious owner. Tell me about them." He launched into a story that was complete fiction. Apparently, I was a reclusive tech genius who had inherited family money and invested it wisely. He and I were supposed to have met at a conference in Dubai. He was considering investing in my next project. I listened to him lie, watched him perform, and I realized my sister had no idea what kind of man she was about to marry. Then again did I owe her that knowledge. She had spent years making my life miserable. While Bryce was spinning his tales, Madison had noticed him talking to me. I saw her face change, saw the jealousy flash across it. She started making her way over her phone, still recording. She reached us just as Bryce was asking for my number. Her hand grabbed his arm possessively. "Babe, who is your friend?" Bryce looked annoyed at the interruption. "Just networking, Madison. Why do not you go get us some drinks?" Madison's eyes narrowed behind her own mask. She looked at me and I could see her trying to figure out if she knew me. "I am Madison Morrison." "Well, Morrison soon," she said, her voice sharp. "Morrison Lane, actually. This is my fiancé." "How lovely," I said. "A Christmas wedding." Bryce jumped back in. "Valentine's Day, actually, at her family's estate." What estate? We lived in a standard subdivision. But I did not correct him. I just smiled and let him continue digging his own grave. That was when Madison made her mistake. She tried to push me, actually physically push me, telling me to stay away from her man. Security was there instantly. Our head of security, David, who had been briefed on the entire situation, approached with 2 additional officers. "Ma'am," he said to Madison, "we have had multiple complaints about your behavior today. You have been asked to leave the VIP area you have been filming without permission, and now you have assaulted a guest. I am going to have to ask you to leave the property." Madison started screaming. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is? We know the owner. One call and you will all be fired." My parents rushed over my father, trying to be authoritative, my mother going straight to tears. "There has been some mistake," my father was saying. "We are guests here. Our daughter is getting married. This is unacceptable." Bryce was trying to charm his way out of it. "Look, officers, clearly there has been a misunderstanding. If we could just speak to your manager, I am sure we can sort this out." David remained calm. "Management has been informed. In fact, the owner has been watching this situation and has asked to handle it personally." That was my cue. I walked forward and I saw Eleanor approaching from the other side with my assistant manager, both of them looking official and serious. I reached up and slowly removed my mask. The ballroom had gone quiet. At least it seemed that way to me. In reality, most people were still mingling, still drinking champagne, still networking. But in our little corner, time had stopped. My mother saw me first. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, Madison. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the marble floor. My father looked confused, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that made no sense, and Bryce went pale. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "For those of you who do not know me, I am Harper Lane. I am the founder and owner of Azure Bay, and these people are my family." I turned to David. "These guests have violated multiple resort policies over the past 48 hours. They have harassed staff, including physically assaulting an employee this morning. An employee who was me, by the way. They gained unauthorized access to a private event, and they have repeatedly used my name and claimed a personal relationship with me to intimidate my staff." "Harper," my mother finally found her voice. "Sweetheart, we did not know. You never told us. I did not tell you a lot of things I said. I did not tell you that I graduated top of my class from Cornell's hospitality school. I did not tell you that I interned with 3 of the top resort groups in the world. I did not tell you that I spent 4 years building this place from the ground up. I did not tell you because every time I tried to talk about my work, my ambitions, my dreams, you changed the subject to talk about Madison's Instagram followers." Madison was crying now, mascara running down her face. "You let me make a fool of myself. You let me treat you like you were nothing." "I was nothing to you anyway," I said simply. This just confirmed it. Then I turned to Bryce. "And you?" I signaled to Elena, who pulled out a tablet and turned it to face the gathered crowd. On the screen was a comprehensive background report. Bryce Morrison, real name Brian Morris, 3 failed businesses, over $200,000 in personal debt, a warrant for fraud in Nevada, and a pattern of targeting women from middle-class families, gaining their trust, accessing their parents' retirement accounts, and disappearing. The photos showed him with at least 4 other women over the past 6 years. Different names, different stories, same pattern. Madison looked at him, her face crumbling. "Tell me this is not true." He did not deny it. He ran. Actually ran for the exit. David let him go. I had already called the police. They were waiting in the parking lot. My parents stood there, and I saw my father age about 10 years, in 10 seconds. "Harper," he said quietly, "we did not know about any of this." "You did not want to know," I corrected him. "It was easier to believe I was a failure. It fit your narrative better." My mother reached for me, but I stepped back. I pulled out a folder that Elena handed me and gave it to my father. Inside was an itemized bill. The room rate at full price, no family discount, the meals, the damages to resort property from Madison's filming without permission, the fee for the assault, which included legal fees, and compensation for the staff member who was assaulted, meaning me, and the trespassing fine for the gala. $25,000, I said. "You have 72 hours to pay, or I will be forced to pursue legal action. Business is business." My mother was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark streaks down her face. "We are your family," she choked out. "You cannot do this to family." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a strange sense of calm. "Family does not assault each other in public," I said. "Family does not humiliate each other. Family does not pick favorites and throw away the ones who do not perform the way they want. Family does not make one daughter feel worthless so the other can feel special." My father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Harper, please. Can we just talk about this privately?" "We had 26 years to talk," I replied. "You chose not to listen." I turned to David, not looking back at them. "Please escort these guests from the property. Their belongings will be packed and delivered to them within the hour. And David, make sure they leave through the main entrance. I want everyone to see." As security walked them out, Madison was still crying, her phone forgotten on the floor where she had dropped it. My mother was trying to explain to anyone who would listen that this was all a misunderstanding, that I was her daughter, that I was being unreasonable. My father was silent, his head down, and I wondered if he was finally feeling shame. I watched them leave through the front doors, watched them pass by guests who moved aside to let them through, watched them get into a regular yellow taxi instead of the black limousine service they had arrived in, the one they had bragged about to everyone. The ballroom doors closed behind them, and I felt Elena come to stand beside me. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. I surprised myself by answering honestly. "Yes, I really am." She squeezed my hand briefly, a gesture of support, and then the moment passed. The gala continued. I took a breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked back into my life. I gave a speech about the future of Azure Bay, about our expansion plans into sustainable luxury tourism, about our commitment to excellence and integrity. My voice did not shake. My hands did not tremble. I networked with investors and partners, pitched ideas, made connections. I danced with Elena and laughed at jokes and felt lighter than I had in years, as if I had been carrying a weight I had not even realized was there until it was gone. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the cleaning crew was quietly restoring the ballroom to its pristine state, I stood on my penthouse balcony. The penthouse took up the entire top floor of Azure Bay, a space I had designed myself with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the ocean. I watched the waves crash against the shore, silver in the moonlight, rhythmic and eternal. My phone had been buzzing all evening, lighting up on the glass table beside me. Messages from my parents, voicemails from Madison, even a text from an aunt I had not heard from in 5 years, telling me I was breaking my mother's heart. I had not listened to any of them. I did not delete them either. I just let them sit there, digital evidence of people who only reached out when they wanted something or when they were facing consequences. Tomorrow I would deal with the business side of things. Tomorrow I would sit down with my lawyer and go over every detail. Tomorrow I would press charges for the assault if my mother did not pay the bill, and I would make sure those charges stuck. Tomorrow I would make sure Bryce was prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and I would provide evidence to help the other women he had scammed. Tomorrow, I would send a company-wide email reminding my staff that they were valued and protected, that no guest, regardless of who they claimed to know, had the right to mistreat them. But tonight, I just stood there, breathing in the salt air, feeling the wind on my face, and realizing that I had just taken out the trash. All of it. In one sweep. I had removed toxic people from my life the same way I ran my business, with clear boundaries, documented evidence, and zero tolerance for abuse. I had spent 26 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. 26 years of bringing home perfect report cards that got a brief glance before the conversation turned to Madison's latest Instagram post. 26 years of making myself available for every family event, every emergency, every crisis, only to be forgotten when it came time for celebrations. 26 years of sacrificing my happiness, downplaying my success, making myself smaller, hoping that one day they would see me, really see me. But the truth was, they did not want to see me. They wanted a version of me that fit their story, that made their narrative work. The supportive daughter who was grateful for their attention. The average one who made Madison's mediocrity look like excellence. The one who would always be there, always be available, always be less than, so they could feel better about their choices. They needed me to be a failure, because if I was not, then they would have to confront the fact that they had treated their successful daughter like garbage while worshipping their unsuccessful one. I was done with that story. I was done being edited and rewritten to fit someone else's plot. I was writing my own now, and in my version I was the hero, not the supporting character. 3 months later, my parents sent a check for the full amount, $25,000 paid from an account I recognized as my father's emergency retirement fund. No note, no apology, just payment like I was a bill collector they needed to satisfy to make me go away. Madison's Instagram went quiet for a while, then returned with a complete rebranding focused on mental health and overcoming toxic relationships. She posted long captions about setting boundaries and recognizing your worth, which would have been funny if it were not so predictable. She never mentioned my name. She never acknowledged what she had done. She just repositioned herself as a survivor of family drama, and her followers ate it up. Bryce was sentenced to 3 years for fraud. Apparently, I was not his only victim, just the one with the best lawyers and the resources to make sure justice was served. The trial revealed he had scammed 7 other women over the past decade, collecting over $400,000 in total. Some of those women reached out to thank me. We formed a group chat, a strange little support system of people who had all been targeted by the same predator. Some of them have become real friends. As for me, Azure Bay expanded. We opened a second location in the Maldives, even more exclusive than the first. Forbes did a full profile this time, with my real name and my real story detailing how I had built a luxury empire from the ground up with nothing but student loans and determination. The article included a photo of me standing on the Azure Bay beach at sunset, and I looked powerful. I looked free. I got calls from my parents after that article. 14 calls in one day. I did not answer any of them. I did not block them either. I just let them ring, let them leave voicemails that I would never listen to, let them exist in the silence they had created. Some people asked if I regretted cutting them off. They asked if I missed having a family, especially around holidays. They asked if I ever thought about reconciliation, about forgiveness, about being the bigger person. The truth is, I did not cut off my family. I cut off people who treated me like I was disposable, like I was an inconvenience, like my only value was in making their lives easier or their other daughter look better. And I do have a family now, a real one. I have Alina, who has been by my side through everything, who celebrated my first investor meeting and helped me pick out furniture for the lobby and held my hand when I thought I was going to fail. I have my team at Azure Bay people who respect me and challenge me and celebrate my successes because they are invested in our shared vision. I have friends who know my worth, who show up for me the way I show up for them, who do not keep score or demand that I shrink to make them comfortable. And most importantly, I have myself. The version of me that I always knew was in there, buried under years of trying to be good enough, small enough, quiet enough. The version that does not apologize for taking up space or making money or being successful. The version that knows her value and refuses to accept less, that sets boundaries and enforces them, that walks away from situations and people that do not serve her. The version that built something extraordinary and does not downplay it to make other people feel better about their own choices. So here is what I learned from all of this. What I wish someone had told me when I was younger and still trying to earn love that was never going to come. You cannot make people love you. You cannot earn respect from people who have decided you do not deserve it. You cannot sacrifice enough, achieve enough, or shrink enough to make someone see your value if they are committed to not seeing it. And you definitely cannot build a relationship on the foundation of being small so someone else can feel big. What you can do is build your own life. Set your own standards. Create your own definition of success. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you, instead of tolerating you, who appreciate you, instead of using you, who see you as you are, instead of who they need you to be. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who will never see your worth, not because they cannot, but because your failure is more useful to them than your success. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the scapegoat in your family? Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. And subscribe, because I share more stories about standing up, speaking out, and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. Remember, you are not responsible for other people's limitations. You are only responsible for your own liberation.